Hello, this is Captain. So this is going to be a video on my ideas for commercial fishing. The devs have asked us for input for what we'd like for commercial fishing, so I figured go through some of my ideas. The number one thing that I would like to see in commercial fishing is fishing pots. Now, I really like the way the devs did the fishing rod. I think it's graphically very attractive. The model looks very cool. I really like the way that the bobber behaves. Even with some waves, the bobber will naturally go up and down on the waves. I think that it is really cool that the hooks are very tiny. I was afraid that with the fishing update that we're going to get these big, massive quarter-meter hooks, but we got some really tiny, tiny hooks on the lure, and I think this is really exciting for some more types of commercial gameplay. So the first type of commercial gameplay I would like to see next is to have some fishing pots. Now, there are a lot of things that you can do with these fishing pots. For example, up around my area in the northeast of the U.S., they have lobster pots and crab pots. If you go out towards Alaska, you'll have Alaskan king crab pots that are much, much bigger. And so it'd be kind of cool to have a couple different size pots. Now, I looked online, and for Alaskan king crab pots, it looks like they're 1 meter by 1 meter, so 1 meter square, and then they're about 0.6 meters tall. I don't think we want anything less than 0.75 tall, so I think if we did 1 meter squared and then 0.75 tall, that would be a good size. And one of the reasons I say that's a good size is we'd be able to put that on the boat. So 1 meter is 4 blocks. Probably I would actually go a little bit longer. I would go 5 just to make everything odd numbered. I think that tends to work better. So maybe 5 by 5 square and then a 3 tall. That way, that would incorporate some cool things we could do in game. For example, one of my favorite things to do in game is to have cranes. So, for example, on this little boat here, we could put a crane. We could grab those pots and we could store them on deck. We're going to need to be able to take either the lobster pots or the crab pots and put them on the deck of our ship. Now, a lot of Alaskan king crab boats will also fish with the pots. They'll actually go out after regular fish like cod. And so you can bait them differently and go get fish. So, what I would do personally if I were the devs was I would make this large pot and a small pot. So small pot has a small capacity, large pot has a large capacity. I would also add things like crab and lobster into the game. Now, if we look at the map here, let's just go to the temperature map. Often fish will be in temperature controlled zones. So you'll have tropical fish in warm waters, you'll have temperate fish in the temperate areas, and then you'll have cold water fish. And so often you'll have crab and lobster in the cold waters. That's why they're crabbing in Alaska. That's why, for those types of crab, that's why they're doing lobster fishing generally around Maine. Due to climate change, some of these lobster are actually moving further north, and so they're having to go up to Halifax to actually get the lobster. So what I think would be cool is for there essentially to be a division. We already have it in game. As you can see, we have the blue area is the cold water. We have it also to the south. We have some mixing here with the temperate zone. We have some mixing with the tropical zone. So what I would like to see the devs do is I'd like to see them move tropical fish down to the south here in the red zone. I would like temperate fish to be anywhere in this area and in this area. And then I like cold water fish to be up here. So kind of segregate your fish. So for example, if you wanted to do lobster fishing or crab fishing, you would have to go up to the north here. Now, you could do, for example, king crab up north. You could do lobster up north. You could also have something, for example, blue crab down south here. There are types of lobster that are, for example, in tropical areas like in Florida, there are essentially clawless lobster that are down here. So you could have different types of fish. What the benefit of the different types of fish are and why I think we should have that is we have a bunch of places here to sell our fish. We can go to JSI, we can go to FJ, Urine Wind, we can go down to Sawyer South here, Sawyer North, we can go to Komodo, Military Island to sell our fish, and we can also go up here, and I believe, yep, right here, we can sell at Tajin. So one of the things that this would do by segregating the fish by temperature, it would give us a reason to go to different places. Now, for example, if I wanted to utilize lobster, the most efficient place for me to go would be to buy Tajin. Now, if I wanted to buy Tajin, it's $200,000. Now, right now, it's not all that efficient to buy Tajin. There's not much to do up in the Arctic. I think this would be a great thing the devs could add to make the Arctic really useful. This base here costs 200,000. It gives us a runway with the ability to spawn out of this hangar. It also gives us the ability to spawn some boats. And now with the new fishing update, we have a fish market right here at Tajin. So what I think would be cool is this would give us a reason to go up here and to fish from this base. We could leave from here, fish, and then come back, and we could either sell it here, or this is one of the big ideas I have here is I think it was important that we have differential prices. I wish that would come back for things like oil, but currently we don't have the differential prices. But I think this is something that could be easily done for fish. So for example, as you can see, all fish are sold for $100. Now, what I would like to see is this. If you're up in the blue area, you're going to get the normal $100 price for fish. For example, in the area around me, the Northeast, where we have lobster fishing, lobster tends to be pretty inexpensive comparatively. If you go somewhere inland, lobster is going to be very expensive because you have to move that lobster over land and it has to stay alive the whole time. So because of that, it is very expensive. And so I would like to see the addition of some live wells. That would be kind of cool. You might have to plumb in some water, so you have to have a water tank. You have to circulate the water tank in the live well. That would be kind of cool. And so, for example, let's say you go up here and you get some lobster. You could buy Tajin, you could spawn your boat, you could go out, drop your pots for lobster, and then you could come back, and if you wanted, you could sell it for $100. But the better thing to do, and they actually do this IRL. When I was an airline pilot, we used to see a stall in the Boston Logan Airport where you could buy lobster. They would give it to you in a styrofoam cooler. The lobster was still alive. You would check it with your baggage, or you'd carry it on, and you would get on a plane and you would fly home with a lobster as you were headed home. And the reason people would do this is it is so much less expensive, plus the lobster would be fresher to get it from the source. So what I think would be a really cool element that would add a lot of gameplay is, say for example, you get a bunch of lobster. Now you could sell it here for $100, or you could load them on a plane. You could fly it down to the south. Now, the further away you get from the source, the more money you should get. So, for example, right here, as you can see, let's look at one of our closest bases to the north. Right here is Sawyer North. So, Sawyer North here is about this distance from the blue area. So, the closest you can get lobster from Sawyer North is right here. So, I would not measure it from Tajin, but I would measure it from the blue area. So, the blue area to Sawyer North is this far, and so that therefore where it's $100 at Tajin, maybe it's $150, $200 here at Sawyer North. You're a little bit further, so essentially I do this with a simple multiplier, right? Because this is in the blue area, Tajin, the multiplier is 1. Now if you look here, it is a certain distance away. You could do it by kilometers. It would then add the multiplier. And then, so this is maybe another, quarter of a kilometer south. Or if you go down here, let's say there's another kilometer to the south here. That would be, let's say it's 150 here, 100 in Tajin, 150 here, $200 here. And then if you go down further, even south, FJ, let's say that's now $250 for a lobster. And then you come down here all the way to JSI. And you would have to consider that the blue area is here, but I think that is still the furthest from the blue area is JSI. Now you're talking $300 for a lobster. So this makes it so that you actually want to use a bunch of your different craft in game. So, for example, we go up here, we buy Tajin, we go out, we fish for our lobster, and instead of just selling it here, we load it onto an airplane and we fly it down south. So flying it all the way down south, we could land at FJ here, and we could offload it here, or if we wanted a little bit more money, we then load it onto a truck, and then we drive it all the way down to JSI, and we sell it here for the greatest amount of profit. I think that's important. And so the whole thing would work for all these different areas. So for example, if you had warm weather fish in here, tropical fish, anywhere in the red essentially is going to be $100 because it's easy to get tropical fish. You start getting into this area, it's barely outside of the red, so maybe you get $110 for a tropical fish. You get up to here, it's going to be, say, $150. But you go up to Tajin, tropical fish are going to be up to, say, for example, $300. So this makes it so that the reciprocal route where, for example, you've brought your lobster down here and sold it at JSI, well, then you launch your boat and you come out and you catch some tropical fish. You then go back to the JSI dock, you load it back on your truck, you drive your truck all the way back up to FJ, you then load it on your airplane, and you fly your airplane back up to Tajin. This gives us a bunch of things to do, and especially, helicopters have a lot of use in game. Airplanes, unfortunately, do not. And this would start to bring airplanes in by just having this little price differential where areas of the north compared to areas of the south, the distance gives us more profit. So it would be profitable to bring a whole plane load of lobster down to JSI, and it would be profitable to bring a whole plane load of tropical fish up to Tajin. This could also work with other future gameplays here, but I think that's an important element of it. And by segregating the different types of fish, for example, it gives this base up here a lot of value. It would also give us some value. For example, if we wanted to go lobster fishing, we could leave out of Sawyer North and we could sail up to the north here. We could take a nice long boat ride and we could go out, and as soon as we get to the blue water, we can now catch lobster. And then when we head back, we would get a pretty good price for it. So if you want a nice short trip, you just go right out here and fish, fish, fish. If you want some more profit, you take a nice long boat ride to get fish, or you can even head all the way up to the Arctic to get fish. So I think that would be a cool thing to do, to segregate the fish to the different zones of temperature as they are in real life. All right, so let's start talking about my ideas for how we should be doing these pots. Again, this is the number one type of fishing I would like to see is pots, and I think because of the versatility. The benefit of this is, for example, you could stack a number of these pots on the back of your boat here. And so you stack, I don't know, maybe 10 pots on the back of your boat. You go out, and then you take a crane, you grab them with a mag-all, and then you drop them in the water. Now, there are some problems with the way we have this in game. For example, I made a mock-up. It was just built out of pipes. It had a winch on it. You have to put logic. All of this stuff adds to the size. A lot of the problem we have in Stormworks is things get big, big, big because we need space for microcontrollers and winches and all this. I think you guys did a really good job with the fishing rod. It has its own new type of line, the monofilament line. I would like to see something similar for pots. I would like to see an innate line just for fishing. I would like to see some new tools for fishing, for example, like a winch. If we go ahead and we take a look at how they winch up pots IRL, here is a picture of a crab fisherman winching up the pot here. Similarly, this is how they will do lobster. So as you can see here, we just have a wheel winch, and what they do is there's a buoy on the end of the line here. As you can see, the pot has a long rope, and it is attached to a buoy. This buoy floats. That's how they find them. And so you can go ahead and you'll move your boat up to there. You'll grab the buoy. The buoy just gets thrown on deck, so the rope goes underneath the first wheel right here. Then it goes over the big wheel, and then it goes down underneath this wheel. And all you have to do is put some tension on these wheels, and it will pull the pot up into the boat. As you can see with what he's doing here, he has a bucket, and the rope goes into the bucket. And he has this winch here. And so you go ahead, you grab the buoy, you put the rope over this top loop here, and then you put it into the winch here. And then you activate the motor, and it will winch it up. And it's all coiled up. Now, the way I think this should work in-game is how you guys have worked on the fishing rod. The fishing rod was very well done as far as I'm concerned. I like the way you did it. And so this is what I would do personally. Your character, so you guys would make a pot that looks similar to this. It would be mesh, and it would be small. It should also be light. We're going to run into some problems if we make these pots too heavy. You're going to have problems where it essentially makes it so you have to have a large boat. You're going to have counterweights. I think it would be nice if you guys would make these pots pretty light. And that way, we don't have to have really robust cranes. We don't have to have really robust counterweights. We could also move them by hand, potentially. And I'd like a lot of the logic to be inbuilt, just like the fishing rod. And that way, we don't have to worry about building our own pots and putting in microcontrollers and all these unwanted behaviors. We shouldn't be using regular winches. Those are great for cables and ropes. We should have our own special fishing winch. This fishing winch could be used for also long lines, which I'll talk about later. But the way that I think you should do this is you drive your boat up, and there will be a new part called the buoy. You guys did a really good job on the bobber for the fishing rod. I think it essentially should just be a bigger bobber. Look like a regular buoy that you would use on crab pots. You would grab that buoy with the E key. So as you come up to the buoy with your boat, you would press E. That would have your player character grab it, just like you grab a magall or a handle, and it would be in the player's hands. Okay. Then what you would do is you would turn and you would face the winch. You would then look at the winch and you would get the command to attach rope. You would press E, the buoy would disappear, completely disappear, and then the rope would be attached to the winch. It would be attached to the winch, and it would go up over here so that it pulls it straight up. This way you guys don't have to worry about having a special collision on the rope. It would be on this particular winch, especially made for pots. It would be just like this. It would hang overboard. You could rotate it if you wanted with a pivot, and then it would have the winch here. So you'd look at the winch, you click attach winch, it would automatically rope the rope up and over this pulley and into there. You would then go ahead and you could do a composite input on it and control it like a regular winch. You'd have an up button, you'd have a down button. This would allow us to control it with panels, however we would like to set it up. So you press up, and what it's going to do is it's going to reel up the wire of the pot. It's going to bring the pot all the way up to the surface. And what I would recommend doing is we could do two things. For example, you could rotate the winch with a pivot if you'd like. You can rotate it over on board of the ship, and then what you would do is you would get a command if you look at the pot that you could empty pot. That would cause the side of the pot to open and the fish to pour out. Again, I think we should have a couple sizes, maybe a 3 by 2 by 2, and then we would have a 5 by 5 by 3. So I have a couple different sizes, so you could use some small boats, but I think each of them should be probably able to be handled by a person. This is often how they do it IRL. This guy right here, this pot's small enough, he would muscle it by hand. He'd bring this up, he would just turn the winch, but then he would grab this pot by hand to empty it. So I think that's what we should be doing in game. Once the pot is up, you should be able to look at the pot and press E. And what will happen is when you press E on the pot, your character will take it into both of their hands, and all of the rope will disappear. That will be all part of the ingrained system that you guys will create. And so you take it with your two hands, and now you can walk around and move with it like it's an object. You would go over by your live well, and you would place it down. So you would drop it, just like when you pick up anything else in game, like a pallet. You'd press E, and you'd drop it on the floor. And then you would press another key, and it would empty it. So let's say that the small trap could hold 5 fish, fish being crab, lobster, or actual fish. They would fall out. So if you put it right over your hopper, they would just fall right in, and now they're in there. If any spilled out on the deck, you just like a regular fish, you go, you pick it up, and you drop it into the hopper. Now it's empty. So you would go and you would grab it with your hands, and you'd bring it over by the winch. And now what would happen is with the pot in your hands, you would press E on the winch, and it would now attach a rope back to the pot. So if you wanted to store the pot and go back to base, you could. You could put the pots on deck, and then you could sail away. Or if you want to put them back in the water so that they can catch more fish, you would walk up with pot in hand, you would press E on the winch, and now the rope would be attached like so, and the pot would be hanging over the winch. All right, this would be automatic, and then you would push the winch over with the pivot, and then you would press the down button on your panel, and the winch would drop it. And so you would continually drop the cable as long as you needed to. It would go all the way down to the bottom. Now, as soon as the pot is on the bottom, you could press a button on the winch, and it would automatically make a buoy. So the buoy would be attached to the end of the rope, and then it would automatically detach. So you would have the buoy, it would drop off here, and bingo, it's sitting on top of the water, and then you would drive away. Just like we have with fishing rods, right? Some of the fish will nibble on the lure, and some of the fish will strike and bite, and then you've caught them, right? So the same thing should be done with the pots. there should be a regular percentage. Let's say it's a 30% chance. So the fish will be attracted to the pot just like they are the lure. So if you drop a pot in the water and there are fish nearby, they will be attracted to the pot. When they get within the vicinity of the pot, they will have a chance to go in to the pot. Let's say it's a 30% chance. So if there are 10 fish, 3 of the fish will go into the pot. The longer you leave the pot in the water, eventually it's going to fill up, right? You leave the pot long enough, even though it's only a 30% chance for the fish to go in, eventually you will fill up the pot. So 5 for a small pot, 10 for a big pot. And then, so the longer you leave these pots out in the water, the greater the chance you have full pots when you bring them up. So you leave a string of pots, however many you want to put down. You want a huge boat, you can lay 100 pots. You want a small boat with 3 pots, you can do that too. So you leave them out there for, say, 20 minutes. Often, if you have a lot of pots, by the time you drop the last one, you should be able to go back and pick up the first one. So this will keep continual gameplay in case people want to stay more engaged. You pull up a side of it. Again, click the buoy, attach it to the winch. The buoy disappears. The rope auto feeds into the winch. And then you'll press your panel key up. Here comes the pot. It comes all the way up. You select the pot with your player character E. He grabs it with both hands. You drop it over the hopper. You press another key. The pot empties. The fish all fall out. And then you can either stack it on the deck, or you can press E again, and it will reattach to the winch, and you drop it down. And then when you detach it from the winch, it drops the buoy. So there's a nice automated system. I think it's going to get too complicated if we have to have independent buoys. And if we use our current ropes and cables, we're going to have a problem where, for example, we cannot grab a cable that is over 40 meters long. Now, IRL, that's not a problem, right? This cable, this rope here could be 300 meters long, and it's fine. The guy can grab the buoy, feed it into the winch, and pull it up. We can't do that in game. We cannot swap winches. And then we would end up dropping the buoy in the water. It would be kind of a nightmare. So that's how I would do pots. I think this is my favorite type of fishing. I think this would really show what the game can do. For example, we could have winches, we could have cranes, we could have all these different parts to go with these pots. But I think the main things we need is we need a new type of rope that is specific to fishing. We have the monofilament line for the rods, and I think we need a special one that operates specially with the fishing winch. Now, this moves on to the next type of fishing, which I also think should use the fishing winch. We can use this exact same winch. You're not going to have to make a new part. And this is for long line fishing. So let's go ahead and take a look at some pictures of that. All right, so here's the next type of fishing I would add is long line fishing. So what this does is you have a buoy, right? We just talked about buoy, so I would make the exact same part. This will make it easier for you guys to engineer. And so what you do here is you have a buoy. And then you have a long line, hence long line fishing. Now, periodically down the line, you have these lines that come off of it, and these are hooked. And so these have bait on them. So you guys did a great job with the lure. I think it looks fantastic. It is really good. So what I would do if I were you is I wouldn't really recreate something new. I would do the exact same part from if you look from the bobber, you guys did a really good job on designing the swivel and the weight. And the hook and lure. I think all that looks great. So what I would do personally if I were you is I would use the same either monofilament line from the fishing rod, or better would be the rope from the pot update. And so what you would do is take the same type of buoy and you would attach a rope to it. And so you'd use the same fishing winch. You would take that fishing winch and you would have your long line. You would grab the end of the long line. Let's say you store the long line in one of the standard equipment lockers like we have for welding torches and fishing rods and fire extinguishers. It would be called long line. Maybe check the typos in this one so that it says long line and not welding torch. And so you would grab your long line and it would be in your inventory on your character. You would then turn and you would face the winch. You would press E on the winch. It would automatically put the line and the buoy hanging down. So the buoy would be hanging. So instead of the pot, it would be a buoy hanging at the base of the line. You would then press the down arrow on your panel and it would start to feed out the buoy. Periodically, let's say every 3 meters, there would be a lure just like you guys have on the fishing rod. So every 3 meters, it would pay out a lure. I don't know how long you'd want to make those guys. Maybe I don't know, maybe 100 meters long, maybe 50 meters long, maybe 25 meters long. Whatever you guys think would be good per long line. And so what you would do is, it would let out, say, let's say it's going to be 50 meters. So you would attach it again, grab it out of the inventory slot. You would attach it. You would then drop it down. The buoy would, as soon as you connect it, the buoy would be visualized right here. It would just pop into existence. You'd press the down arrow. The new rope the new rope icon here, that would be thinner and only able to be used for fishing. So fishing rope, let's call it. The fishing rope would appear with the buoy. You'd press down. The buoy would drop down and it would float in the water just like the bobber you guys did. I think the bobber is great. And so every 3 meters, there would be one of the lures, the same lure you had on the fishing line. I don't think you guys need to reinvent the wheel. Just the one that we have on the fishing line is great. You already have all the code in there for it to attract fish. Beautiful. And so then, since let's say it's 50-meter long, long line each one of those units. And so what would happen is, after 25 meters, it would put a central buoy, just like in this picture. So as you can see, it has a central buoy. So this would be the first buoy. It would drop as you lower it, and you would have lure, 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 and then it would spit out another buoy, and then it would go lure, 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 and then you get your final buoy. So once your final buoy is now in place here, you would have to press a button on here and it would drop the buoy. And it would drop it, or it could just automatically drop it. You know, that's fine too. I don't think it's a big deal. It eventually would go all the way in. And so you would drop the last buoy. So now you would look out behind you in the water and it would be buoy, 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 and you know you have a set of long lines out there. And so this would be really cool too, because in real life, they tend to have long line ships. They tend to have crabbing ships. They tend to have, all these different types. They have trolling ships and they have net ships. And so in game, though, we could have whatever we wanted. So you could have a stack of pots and you could have a stack of long lines. You could have just a long line ship, however you wanted to do it. But the long lines would be physically in those item slots, like a fire extinguisher or welding torch. And so each one would kind of spawn into existence when you click it into the fishing winch. So this would be a new part in the fishing winch. That would allow you to do both pots or do long lines. So this would allow you to do either one of them, and it would this will cut down the parts you have to make. They would work and function the same way, which would make that much more user conscious, and they would work really well. So that would be the next type, is long line fishing. Same thing with the fishing rod, is the lures would attach the fish just like they do, but we'd have many of them. So say, we might have 10 total hooks on there, kind of the same capacity as a large pot. So if you leave it out there for a short period of time, again, let's say there's a 30% chance the fish will nibble on them. They won't necessarily bite every time. But if you leave it out there long enough, you're pretty much guaranteed to get 10 fish on your line. You would, let's say you drop 5 long lines, and then you come back and you go to pick up the first one. So same thing as the crab pots. You come up to your first buoy. You grab the buoy, and then you click it into the winch. The buoy would disappear. It would automatically feed the line up through and into the winch. As you reel it in, the fish would come up. As soon as the first fish comes up, the winch would automatically stop, kind of like when you winch a rope in. It would automatically stop when the rope comes all the way in. And so here your first fish would be dangling on the lure, right? You would look at it, you press E, now the fish is in your hands. They have to do this IRL with long lines. They have to physically take each fish off with their hands. Somebody has to do this who's running the winch. This could also be good for multiplayer gameplay, where the person who's running the winch is running the winch and another person grabs the fish off the hook. So they see the fish, they grab it, they put it in the hopper. Then they continue to reel, next fish, next fish, next fish. And so finally you get to the point where you've taken all the fish off, and here comes the buoy. The buoy comes up and it stops when it gets to the top of the winch. And so what you do then is you look at the buoy, you press E. Now you have the long line in your hands again, in your personal inventory, your 2-slot inventory. You would turn around behind you and you would look at your empty 3-slot inventory storage thing like with a fire extinguisher, and you would put that into your equipment storage. And so now the long line is stored, and you can go back and you can go back to base if you'd like. And if you wanted to just send the line out again, all you'd have to do is lower it, and it would reappear with hooks, and you would reset the line. So that would be how I would do long lines. I think that's another easier way to set it up. It would work the same way as pots. So the next type of fishing that I would add is trolling, and I would actually think this would be pretty easy to add. You have to manually control the rod. So let's say, for example, you cast the rod with the left mouse into the water, right? You actually have to do this IRL. There's no automation for this IRL. So let's say you grab your rod, you cast it into the water, and then you put it in the rod holder, okay? Cast this one, rod holder. So left mouse button to cast, just like we have it, put it in the rod holder. Left mouse, cast, rod holder. Left mouse, cast, rod holder. Left mouse, cast, rod holder. Okay, good. So now we're moving our boat forward at 3 to 5 knots, all right? And all the lures are pulling in the water. Now, currently, I don't think you guys have any sort of sport fish, and I don't know how fast the fish are, but let's say you add a new class of fish that are called sport fish, right? You would add and let them be big, let them be worth a lot of money. This gives us an incentive to go catch different types of fish, like sport fish. So tuna are very expensive IRL, are very valuable, especially sushi grade tuna. Marlin are, mostly a sport fish. Swordfish are a highly desired food item that's, worth a lot of money. And so they're all trolled for. You have to actually move to get a lot of these. Or you do sometimes move to get a lot of these. So again, you put your rod in, you cast your rod first. Let's do it that way. Cast your rod first, put it in the rod holder, and then you move your boat 3 to 5 knots. So you have this new class of fish, and they're much faster. They can go, let's say they can go 3 times that. So let's say they go 15 knots, these fish. All right, some of them can go, I think, like 40 miles an hour IRL. And so what they do is they only chase moving lures. And so if the lure is moving fast enough, they will chase it, and they can actually catch it where the other fish can't. And so as you're moving your boat through the water, they will chase it. You'll get the same thing that we currently get. You'll get a nibble, and then every once in a while you get that splash icon, and we have a fish on. So let's say we get a fish on this rod. You would come over with your player character. You would press E to pull the rod out of the rod holder, and now you have the rod in your hands and a fish is on. And just like we currently do in game, you press the R key and it would reel in the big fish. And now you have a huge marlin. Same thing that happens with the current rod. I wouldn't change it, but once it reels all the way in, now you have a big fish in hand and you put them in the hopper. And then when you're ready, you cast that one back out, put it back in the rod holder. This would be really good for multiplayer too. If you have 5 rods in the rod holders, likely a bunch are going to have fish on at the same time, and so you have a friend pull in this one and a friend pull in this one. You have another friend driving the boat. I think this would be really good for multiplayer. So those are pretty much my ideas for fishing. I hope you guys found this helpful. I know you guys were asking for some ideas. I think a lot of these are doable. I think they really add some mechanics to the game where we can have some new parts that are specifically for fishing. I really would hope you guys would not use the standard winches for fishes. Maybe if we got something like, shark fishing later, some really huge types of creatures that we fish for, maybe we use the regular winches, but I think we should have a specific block for fishing, a fishing winch. And this would allow us to do all the things that I stated, where we don't have to worry about making sure the rope is long enough. We don't have to change the rope mechanics, where if it's over 40 meters, you can still pull it up. This would allow you to grab the buoy at any depth. So you want to drop a pot out at 300 meters, you can grab the buoy. You want to drop your long line out there, you can do it. You can even have different depth long lines. They have this IRL. Some of the long lines sit on the bottom for bottom fish, some sit in the middle, and some sit on the top. So I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope this gave you guys some ideas. I'm really excited. I really enjoyed the fishing rod update, and I'm really looking forward to the commercial fishing. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.